So this report came from Mark Spears. I'm going to trust it. The Nets have been shopping Spencer Dinwiddie. From a morality standpoint, I don't like this at all, but if the rumor's out there, then what am I going to do? Not talk about it? Dinwiddie is very good, and he's about to be 28 years old. Now, when we talk about the ACL injury on Dinwiddie, he had it, December 27th? And so you think a year later, whoever has him, you could see him by basically January of next season. Now, the one thing with Dinwiddie is this is not his first ACL injury. He actually had another one back when he was in college, his junior year. And the ACL injury is, of course, not as scary as it once was, but it's still kind of scary, of course. And it would be interesting to see just how all in would teams be willing to go for Dinwiddie. Now, why would the Nets not just want to keep him? Well, he's close to being a free agent, and he's going to make more money than the $12 million he's projected to get next season if he accepts his player option. And the Nets are already deep in the luxury tax, so there you go. In fact, Harden, Durant, and Kyrie alone put them over the salary cap. Now, that same player option makes it interesting for other teams, because if you trade for Dinwiddie, you're basically trading for his bird rights and the hope that you can convince him to re-sign. Now, even then, it starts to get a little tough because the free agent class for this offseason, if Dinwiddie were to decline that player option, is not as loaded as it once was, but there's still teams with cap space. So if you're going to trade for Dinwiddie, then you've got to be ready to pay him, whether it's this offseason or in the 2022 offseason. Now, before we start speculating on moves, what should the Nets look to get for Dinwiddie? I mean, guys who can help him right now. Defenders, pass-first guys, shooters, any sort of a big man would be nice, of course. Now, if I can think about teams for Dinwiddie, honestly, I thought of my Celtics first, but I don't think the Celtics have anyone the Nets want or that the Celtics are willing to trade. The next team that I thought about was the Knicks. I know they just traded for Derrick Rose, but if they had an opportunity to get Dinwiddie, I think they should consider it. They are going to have to pay Julius after next season and RJ after next season as well, so there's that. I just don't know if the Knicks have anybody good enough for the Nets. I mean, would the Nets be all in on getting, let's say, Alec Burks and Nerlens Noel for Dinwiddie? Just like two good rotation guys? I mean, maybe, especially because they could probably re-sign both of them to bargain contracts, but maybe the Nets would prefer guys who are on longer deals. If I can think about Miami, since they're always rumored for this type of thing, I mean, I guess the obvious thing is either Olynyk or Iguodala for Dinwiddie, and Olynyk would give the Nets some size and some offense at center. Iguodala could hopefully give them playoff Iguodala. I think Iguodala is too old to bank on him being better in the postseason at this point. And besides that, Olynyk, maybe. I don't think there's any chance the Heat are going to deal anyone the Nets would really be excited about. Duncan Robinson or Hero or whatever, or Achua. So maybe that one just doesn't really happen. The other one would be Dallas as a bit of a maybe team. They've got the James Johnson expiring. I don't know if that would really excite the Nets either. I mean, in terms of an actual player, I'm sure they'd be willing to get off of Josh Richardson. With the Nets like that, maybe. The Mavs do have a couple of centers between Dwight Powell, Maxi Kleber, Willie Cauley-Stein. Maybe the Nets would like one of those dudes. Would the Mavs be excited about more of a ball handler next to Luka? They might just want as much shooting as possible at this point. I have seen the Pistons rumored for Dinwiddie, or there's at least been a lot of conversation about it on the Detroit side of the internet. I think if the Pistons could get Dinwiddie without trading any of their young guys, then they should consider it. Because I think the Nets would at least think about Mason Plumlee or DeLon Wright. And part of this is because Dinwiddie would not mess up the tank this season. Also, while Killian Hayes only played 7 games, he was potentially the worst player in the league when he was out there. And I'm not saying he's going to be bad, but he is not ready to be a starting point guard. The next team for Dinwiddie I think about is the Bulls, just because their point guard situation remains One of the more interesting things in the league, because I say it every time, they've got 1 million guards and yet they still need playmaking. Should be said, Dinwiddie is not really a pass-first guy, but he's a better passer than Kobe White, certainly. And he's way more threatening offensively than Satoransky. And there have been rumors that they have considered trading Thad Young. Thad could fit in pretty well to what the Nets do. I think he could be a small ball 5 for them. But he's also been pretty good for the Bulls, and they've been using him a lot more as a passer. Like, elbow, post-ups, cutters to the basket, that sort of thing. That one is interesting to me, Dinwiddie in Chicago. What if it was P.J. Tucker, Daniel House, and Ben McLemore for Spencer Dinwiddie? Or 2 of those guys or whatever. Should be said, House and McLemore have not been shooting the ball well this year. Is that worth anything? I don't know. For Houston's sake, they have Spencer Dinwiddie. And so they can go into next season. It's John Wall, Dinwiddie, Eric Gordon, Christian Wood. Do they get their draft pick? We'll have to see. I can't help but at least think about the Grizzlies for a Dinwiddie trade. Until Jaren Jackson comes back, I'm not really sure what the Grizzlies are. They're just kind of staying afloat right now, and it is respectable. And it's fair to just be like, nah, it's fine. They don't need to do anything too wild. But at the same time, it's not often the guys who average 20 points a game just suddenly become available. Well, it happens more than never, but you know what I mean. And between Gorgie Jang, who the Nets could be interested in, Tyus Jones, who's one of the better backup point guards in the league, DeAnthony Melton, good on defense. He's made some strides on offense this year. I could picture why the Grizzlies would be like, no, we just want to keep all our guys. But again, Dinwiddie, pretty good, but they'd also have to pay him after this season or next season. I don't think the Clippers are a potential team just because they're all in for right now, like the Nets are, and I don't think they would be willing to wait on Dinwiddie to come back. I guess you can think about Orlando. I mean, they're my favorite team to trade for every guard who becomes available. And, I mean, you got Aaron Gordon, you got Fournier. Maybe they would prefer Terrence Ross. If they were looking to get a big guy, there's Kem Birch or Mo Bamba. Steve Clifford would definitely prefer to hold on to Kem Birch and probably give him like a 10-year contract. Does the front office agree? I don't know. Of course, the Magic have Cole Anthony. Do we think Dinwiddie being there would be good or bad for Anthony? Don't really know. They've also got Markelle Fultz, so you got to care about that too. I think there's definitely some interesting teams, with the most interesting to me still being the Bulls, and maybe the Knicks as well. If I can think about some teams that have cap space this offseason and who could throw a deal at Dinwiddie, I mean, the Knicks are sitting there. They've got a whole lot of money to play with. San Antonio, do we think Dinwiddie fits in there? Maybe not. You could convince me either way with that one. Would OKC choose to make a bit of a swing now for a guy like Dinwiddie? My guess is no, unless they had the intention of trading him. I could picture Sam Presti doing that one. Charlotte, probably not. I think they have just a few too many ball handlers to where it would start to get a little awkward with Dinwiddie. And I think Dallas can get themselves some more cap space if they really wanted to. It's just, like I said earlier, would they want a guy like Dinwiddie who likes to have the ball next to Luka, or do they just want to go all out with as much shooting as possible?